Hey, this is Al McKay. Welcome to episode 119. I hope you had an amazing Christmas or whatever it is that you're celebrating. If you're celebrating at all, maybe you're not. Either way, I hope you're enjoying your holidays and having a great December. We're just 2 episodes shy, this one and next one, episode 120, for the year. So I hope that you've found this to be beneficial. I hope you've gotten a lot from this, and I hope that you're enjoying it. More importantly, if you want to get the guide while it's still available, go to alanmckay.com/119. You'll be able to access and download the guide there, which is a free ebook, which has all the information covered in this month's episodes on making this the best year yet. And you can also find key quotes and other information, everything to do with this episode, as well as other goodies and other good stuff. You can send me a message. There should be a button on the right somewhere that you can click and shoot me a message and let me know how you're doing and how I can help any way if I can to help end your year strong. Okay, so that is it for now. Let's dive into this episode. And this episode, just FYI, is doing an audit on 2017. In other words, really diving deep and looking into a review of what you've accomplished and what you've managed to pull off throughout this year and what you can learn and apply to next year. And I think this is going to be really fun and hopefully a lot of really unexpected insights that you can get from this episode. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
Okay, so let's play a game. More importantly, this is something that I do want you to write down. And that's because I want you to do an audit on your year. In other words, look back at it and really dive deep, try and figure out like what was working, what wasn't, and what can you extract from this year to apply more effectively to next year. So 2017, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you do this year? Really be honest with yourself here. You know, what were your goals and how many of those did you actually manage to get done? I know some of us might not have even gone that far. We might not have even built goals, or it was so long ago and we dropped the ball so quickly, we don't even remember what the heck we set out to do. But for some of us, I'm hoping a lot of us that listen to this podcast, we realize how valuable those goals are because we can measure how we're moving forward to those bigger goals that take a lot longer than 1 year to accomplish, i.e. world domination. So how many of those goals did you not manage to achieve? Okay. And this is the important thing because I want you to really outline why. And I think it's important because as much as we can pat ourselves on the back for managing to crush the goals that we did, it's important to look at the ones that we didn't do and really try and reflect on why that is. It might just be that we got distracted, they weren't a huge priority, we got lazy, you know, there's dozens of reasons, but it might go deeper than that. And it might be that we have that fear of success where we're afraid of accomplishing that we're not worthy, or fear of failure being that what if I try and I fail, therefore I should not try at all, which is, you know, one of those things that I think we all have but is a nonsensical. But it might be other things. It might be, you know, judgment of other people, that you're doing something that doesn't resonate with others, others don't understand, therefore you want to align and conform with what they think. You know, or it could have been 100 other things, a financial thing where maybe you're not willing to take the risk because you don't have the security around yourself to really make it happen. And I think by diving deep into this, you can really start to deconstruct the reasons and then start to set yourself up for success the next time around. So in other words, leverage those goals that you still think are worth doing. So in other words, maybe there's some goals you set out to do that you didn't quite crush this year, but they're valuable enough to you that you want to try again. And more importantly, looking at why you didn't actually get them done in the first place, really diving deep on that. Let's say that it is security, then that's good to know because that's an easy one to fix. If you're afraid of the risk, you remove the risk. Maybe the first 6 months of the year, and I talk about that whole 3-6-3 mindset of working your butt off for a solid 6 months and then spending 3 of those months collectively doing things that are going to further yourself and get further in, the long term. And then, of course, the 3 months where you should try to live and have those mini retirements as well. But using that 6 months to set yourself up. So in other words, saving your money, maybe accumulating vacation time, whatever it is, those things that are going to allow you to have that freedom to take those risks while still minimizing the actual real risk. So if it is to do with security, like you're afraid, like, well, if I fail at this, then, I'm going to be homeless and out of my butt, then it's as simple as, sorry, I'm just adjusting my headset. It's as simple as saving up enough money, figuring out how much you need where you suddenly feel comfortable. And you can then go out and do it knowing that worst case scenario, you've got the money, you've got the means, everything's going to be all right. So think about what are the reasons why you didn't accomplish those things. And maybe if it is you're being lazy, then you need to put in an accountability partner, someone that you can check in with who's going to kick your butt if you don't accomplish it, or have stakes involved where if you don't accomplish it, you got to run down the street naked, whatever it might be that will entice you to hit those goals this time around. Putting in those mini goals, having, like I said, that immediate urgency or attacking with urgency, having a 90-day year, all these little tools and weapons that we can use to assure that we do aggressively hit our goals. Maybe it's as simple as figuring out, well, why do I want to do this in the first place? And that can be a really powerful one. It might be, well, I want to have a goal. Let's say I want to get in shape, because that's usually everyone's goal for January, and especially after Christmas with 12 turkeys and a lot of rum and brandy. If your goal is that I want to get in shape, well, maybe you got to think more about it. Okay, it isn't just like, this is something I got to do. Maybe you got to lean into that and say, well, if I were in shape, then I'm going to feel more confident about this, and this. Or I'm going to feel more attracted to the opposite sex. Whatever it is that drives you to make that goal a real goal. Like, what are you working so hard to? Because when you're killing yourself on the treadmill or cycling down the street, whatever it is that you're doing, you've got to justify in your mind why you're putting up with that punishment. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to you. It's easy to give up. But if you've got that goal, and I use that metaphor about swimming towards land, and I kind of made that up. The more I think about it, it is such a true thing, because that's something that is in the distance that you can see. And not only that, but it's going to change your life. The pain that you're doing now, having to swim, having to survive, all of these things, they're going to get you to that place, that paradise, that island, unless it's lost, that is going to be your sanctuary. So think about that. Not only what are your goals, but like, why are you doing them? Like, why is that a goal to you? What is so important about it? So that way it can resonate with you. And like I said, it's important also just to say, like, well, why didn't it work? Why did I drop off the horse? For me, I know that in 2016, one of the things that I felt I struggled with was I got a little too comfortable, and I feel like this year I definitely crushed it. I got a lot done, but at the same time, I feel like I spread myself too thin. I had too many things on my plate, too many shiny objects, and I didn't have that laser focus. And bit by bit, I'm looking at 2018, and it's a scary year because I've got triple the amount of things likely on my plate. But that's why I'm going to be utilizing this time right now to make sure that I'm prepared, I have the right people in place to support me, and together we have that clarity. We know exactly what we want to accomplish. So there's Pareto's Law, which is the 80-20 principle. And that's something that I think is worthwhile seeing, like, how that applies to you. So a couple of the things that I want to talk about is, like, for you, like, what were the things that made you the most money, and what were the things that you found to be the most rewarding? So look at it like this. Usually a lot of the time with your clients, you might have 20% of your clients make you 80% of your income, okay? And it's really funny to look at that, because the more I grow and the more I work with certain clients, the more I realize, like, yeah, there are certain clients that are literally giving me 80% of my income, and then there'll be 80% of my clients who give me about 20% of my income. So in other words, finding the right clients that you really enjoy working with, finding the ones that make you the most money, or whatever it is that you're using as your key indicators to measure what you would see as success. Because again, money isn't always going to be one of those. It might be career, like it might be that certain people that you work with are really stepping up your career and doing a lot more for you. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. But I like to think that the 80-20 principle applies to everything, and it's one of those things that you could look at and really measure the fact that like 80% of your clients are giving you hell and you could easily get rid of them and lose 20% of your income. Well, great. That means that you have another 400% of your clients' space that you could be putting into finding more clients who make up that 20%. In other words, you could 5x your income very easily. So just think about that and how that can apply. By freeing up your time, it gives you the chance to find more of those sorts of clients. I always think that you find those big success points and you double down on those. So in other words, getting rid of the people that are causing you the most pain and just focusing on the ones that are giving you the most success and finding more of them. When I did the episode 99 with Christina Burden, that was something that I talked to her a lot about, is that she has 2 specific clients that are very big names in the car industry, in car wrapping and all that. And most of the big jobs come from them. They pay really well, they pay on time, and a lot of the work that she does for them ends up getting the most attention. And then there's everyone else who are more kind of like, hey, can you do my car, or can you do this? And they're all small little jobs, and typically people who don't necessarily know what they want. And so for me, my whole 80-20 would be to get rid of a lot of the other ones, start saying no to a lot of them, and find more of these other 2 that are giving her the most success. Because if she frees up her time, she can either do more work for them, or she can look for more people who are that model, that type of person that she can replicate. She can double down on them to 5x her income. So think about that for a minute and really dive deep on that. Like, what is your 80-20? Who are the 80% of your clients that are really bugging the hell out of you? Who are the ones you enjoy? Who are those 20%? Where's your money coming from? And, what's the percentage on that? I'm sure it's going to work out to be that 20% of your clients are the ones, even if you're not enjoying the work with them, they're probably the ones giving you 80% of your income. So the next big thing is, what did you enjoy working on this year? In other words, out of all the projects you did, are there any that you can particularly look back at and say, you know what, maybe this didn't make as much money, but this is something that I really, really enjoyed doing. Or it's something that I was really proud of, and I wish I got more of this caliber of work that I could show off. Or this client is someone that it was a dream working with them, and I would love working with them again. I think it's worth identifying them because, again, these are the ones that you want to find more of. I always keep saying that, you find those ones, you double down on that. You find more of that, less of the others. So as soon as you can identify that, you can then replicate that. So what are the things you hate doing? What are the projects or the clients or the experiences you had that you absolutely hate doing and you never want to do again? Because that is a goal for 2018. More of this, less of that. Okay? Really critical, because I cannot count the amount of times I've been sitting at my desk 3 days without sleep, stressed, wanting to throw up, just thinking like, how the hell did I get myself into this predicament? Like, what the hell am I doing? And just thinking, never, ever again will I do this. And I feel fortunate enough that, I can identify those sorts of clients these days. And I guess somewhere along the way, I did that never again, because I usually can tell a mile away the type of clients who are going to give me that experience. But on this, I just finished on Game of Thrones, and that was one of those projects to an extent. Like, I had friends visiting from LA, and they came up, and I remember I would, they'd get up at 10 in the morning. I hadn't slept, and like, it's been a long time since I've been through that, but like, I hadn't slept, and I'd work all the way through, and my goal was to get everything done by 6 p.m. so that we could go and hang out with them for a few hours, and then we'd go out, we'd party, have a good time. They'd come home, they'd go to sleep, be 10 o'clock at night, and I would go back to work, and I forgot about it. And then one of my friends made a comment about, that I don't get much sleep, or I don't value sleep, and how I should value sleep more. And I was like, dude, like, this is me. Like, there's nobody who values sleep more than I do. But then I realized why he was saying that is because his perception of me, all he had seen in the past year, was me literally working 2 or 3 days with like very minimal sleep. And of course, if that's the case, then it's like, dude, really, like, sleep is important. And it's like, yeah, I know. So we all go through those, and it's been so so long since I've had an experience like that, but I had it this year. I had one of those clients, one of those projects that definitely had a lot of bumps in it, and it was definitely a learning experience. It's good and bad with anything, but yeah, it definitely was one of those. And that's another good point to bring up, and this is just for the record, not related to the Game of Thrones thing I just mentioned, but who are the people you would conflict with? And also, what can you take from those experiences? So again, I'm fortunate enough I haven't really had any real big conflicts in a long time. But especially when you're working on site with other people, there's definitely that part of it. And I think that in a way, that's kind of why I like working for myself a lot, is because no matter where you go, there's always going to be one person who just bugs the hell out of you. And it might be that anything they're doing to you, it might just be their behavior to other people. And I've definitely experienced that, where it's just watching them interact with other people around you. It would anger me just to see someone kind of being that disgusting to other people and things that they'd say, all that. And I feel like the advantage of freelancing and jumping around a lot is that if I do experience those people, it's not a big deal because, a few weeks later, I'm going to be on the next job. And it's not as big an issue rather than being trapped in the same room every single day with that person. But did you have any conflicts? Whether they're personal relationships, whether they're professional relationships, what were the reasonings behind them and what can you take from it? It might be just, I got to identify these people and not be around them more, or I got to keep my mouth shut around them, or maybe there's some aha thing that you can learn from them. I think I mentioned this, but like Tobin Kirk, who it would have been one of the earlier episodes, he's an exec producer for Blind at the time, which, by the way, I'm really excited about, as Chris Doe, the owner and founder of Blind, is going to be on the podcast pretty soon. And Tobin and I were having lunch one day, and we were talking about a mutual person that we had both worked with at different times in our career, who was just a phenomenon. There's nobody I've ever met quite like him, who's just like set out, his goal in life is just to screw people over and steal and do anything he can. And they had just fired him recently and completely blacklisted him from the company. And what was the interesting thing is that while we were having the discussion and he was kind of talking about it, there were some kind of compliments that I gave to the person, just because an observation of this particular person was that through arrogance, he managed to always get what he wanted. He managed to get a lot of work, and then obviously he always get fired from those jobs, but he managed to always talk his way into places and kind of lie and but get what he wants just by demanding it, and that was something that always kind of amazed me, was that this particular person was able to always be like, no, you need to give me a raise. No, I'm the best in the world at this. You need to hire me, and I need twice as much money as everyone else. And the thing is, he would get a lot of it. He would get a lot of it just because no one else would ever say the things that he would say. And I think just by not knowing how to respond, most people just gave him what he wanted. And it was just really interesting. And I remember saying that at the time, that I think maybe there's a lesson to learn from this person. The fact that he is willing to say all these things and do all these things that just completely conflict with most people's human code. We don't do that stuff because it's just not cool. But maybe there's some happy middle ground. Because I think a lot of us were too, not politically correct, but I'll say maybe somber in how we approach things. We try to be very polite and not overstep our bounds, whereas you got someone who is doing the extreme of that and getting what they want and probably rubbing people the wrong way as he goes, but he's oblivious to that. But maybe there's a middle ground there, that all of the rest of the world should try just to see what would happen. And it was just one of those things that I remember Tobin saying wow, I can't believe that you're actually saying that about him, kind of complimenting this guy. And it's just well, yeah, I mean, it's more an observation that you don't do what they do, but seeing their success and seeing their results, maybe there's a slightly gray area where you can still be a human being, but still maybe get some results that we're too nice to kind of to go after. So, I bring that up just because I think of that as something where I can look at someone who I'm astonished as a human how they just are completely on another level, and not in a good way, than anyone else, and the way that they act. But I can still look at that and say, well, yeah, there's something to learn from that besides don't be a dick. There's a lot that you could still gain from that. And I think it's important to look at those interactions, whether you're in the right, you're in the wrong, they're in the right or wrong. What are the conflicts or things that you had throughout the year that you could maybe still take something from? And I think that's the best thing, is no matter whether you're in a positive or negative situation, to look at it constructively and try to get the most from it. And I think that, typically throughout the year, we're going to have a little bit of that. And I mentioned, like, how much money did you make this year? Like, where did it come from? And I think it's good to look at that, because you might be surprised when you really sit down. I'm kind of going back to the whole 80-20, but you might be surprised about that when you start to sit down and say, well, where did most of my income come from this year? And then you might realize, like, wow, like, now that I think about it, it's mainly from the same client, or maybe it's from these logo jobs that I don't like doing, or whatever it might be. But the key thing there is going back to that 363 that I mentioned. Maybe it is that you structure getting more of those jobs, those 6-month jobs that you don't enjoy doing, knowing that they're worth triple their weight in gold than any of the other jobs, and they can bankroll the freedom for you to have more focus on the things that mightn't pay as much but you enjoy more later. In other words, maybe doing a little bit more of the thing that you don't enjoy doing short term, like just for this year, will give you the financial freedom to then go after the things that you really care about doing. And that can also apply to the fact if you are not in the visual effects industry and you are wanting to get into design, games, or film, or TV, or whatever it might be, VR. This might be a chance to go and do that. This might be a chance to go work on your short film. This might be a chance to go work on your book, your art book, your app, your project, whatever it is that you aspire to do. Doing more of this thing that you don't enjoy doing might actually allow you to build that capital to go and bankroll what you truly do enjoy doing, and use it as a way to bridge into that. So it sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes you got to do that. And it's also important to think about where are the experiences that you had throughout the year that you had overwhelmed, where maybe you felt out of your depth, maybe you didn't feel comfortable. And again, this doesn't need to be just sitting on the box, like on the computer. This might be in other areas too. Maybe you got asked to do public speaking, maybe meetings, or some of the responsibilities that your boss gave to you that you feel are not your area, and you're doing these things that really make you worry about whether or not, like, long term it's going to put your job at risk. Whatever it is, like, this is the time to identify these things, because maybe you're being asked to animate and you're a terrible animator, but you keep getting these things, and because of that, it makes you look clumsy or incompetent, and you're not quite delivering at the level that you are in other areas. By identifying, like, what are the things that are giving you that overwhelm or bringing you down, it might be worth communicating that to your boss and saying, look, I really struggle in these areas, and I feel like if, 80-20, if I did more of this, it would, overall make me, if I did 20% more of this other area, it's going to make me 80% better as an artist, rather than putting all my attention in this one thing that's, 80% of why I don't like my job, or 80% of the why I look bad is because of that. In fact, when I was 18 years old, I was working at a visual effects studio, and maybe it's arrogance, but I basically went in and negotiated that I don't want to do logo work ever. And it was partially because I think back then I had a bit of my mentality wasn't really to quality check my work. I just kind of did it, and in my mind, I did it. It was done. It wasn't like, does this look good? And it took me a while to kind of adopt that mindset of, well, I want to take pride in what I'm doing, even if it's things I don't enjoy. Instead, it was like, fuck this, I don't enjoy this, so I'm just going to knock it out, and it would look like shit. But at least I had the foresight to go to my boss at the time and say, look, honestly, I love doing all this stuff. I do not like doing logo work. In future, is it possible just to not do this? And it was one of those things I ended up carrying on throughout the next couple of years of my career, where I basically boycotted those certain things. And it just meant that I focused on the things I was good at. Because to me, it wasn't as much that I hated doing it. I just felt like I wasn't good at, making nice, shiny, beveled or chamfered logos and stuff like that. So why give me something that I'm probably, for whatever reason, going to fuck it up? And, you can approach it the right way and the wrong way, but I think the way that I did it, it at least, we're all in agreement that, okay, Alan doesn't do that, Alan stays happy, and we get someone else who's going to do that job because, they're not on their high horse like Alan was at 18. So in general, I think that it's worth asking yourself these questions. And I know it might sound like, oh my God, like, this is something that I should just instinctively know. But I think that unless you really sit down and think about it, that's when you're going to be like, you know what? Hey, those couple of gigs were all from the same client, and they were the ones I really enjoyed. All the other ones I don't enjoy. Maybe I need to start doubling down and working more with this one client, and that's going to save me having to look for work all the time, blah, 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 blah. Like, you don't know what kind of key realizations you're going to have through really knuckling down and spending that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just really doing that deep dive, that audit on your year, including like looking at goals that you didn't accomplish, why you didn't accomplish them, and are they ones that you do want to have another crack at this year? All these different things. So it might sound like a lot, but it shouldn't take that much time. But I think that you are going to have those realizations about like what worked, what didn't work, why, and how can I avoid repeating these mistakes. At the same time, what were my successes and how I can repeat them. And I always think of Back to the Future with this when Michael J. Fox comes back in time. He's going to warn him about, about the plutonium and the terrorists and all that stuff, and in that bit. But like, if you could go back in time to the beginning of 2017 and meet your younger self, your elegant younger self, and say like, hey, I got to warn you about this year. What would be those things that you would warn yourself about? Because I think in a way, like when you rephrase things like that, and again, it might sound silly, but when you restructure this whole thing to, if I were to go back in time, I would warn myself not to date that person, or not to take on that job, or not to slack off here, whatever it might be, or do more of this, or invest in Google, whatever it is. Invest in Bitcoin, I think, is more the relevant one these days. But that would be one that, again, you can trick yourself into being like, oh shit, I didn't think about this, but I would totally do this. And I think that's important because, again, this is something that you can adopt into 2018. This is you kind of going back in time to the beginning of this year to say, or to the beginning of 2018 to say, well, hey, what are the warnings to myself that I can apply and hopefully kind of pull over to this year as well? So it's definitely one of those things that, like I said, just sit down and go through it, because I think it is so critical. But it's more about tricking yourself by putting these scenarios through its run, that you start to think differently. And that's what it's about. It's not about, well, if I go and tick all the right boxes, Alan says I'll have my whole life figured out. It's about tricking yourself into realizing, oh shit, I never thought about this, but this is so clear to me now that, this is where I'm getting the most success, or this is the reoccurring thing of why I keep failing at everything I'm doing, whatever it might be. So it's worth it. It's worth doing the time. It's worth running through those exercises. And even if you just get that one or two or three things, those key realizations, they can completely change the outcome of next year and the year after that. So it's worth it. So do it. And we got one more episode for the month, which we're going to be tackling in the next couple of days. So that is it for now. Shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear any like really big aha moments that you have, realizations throughout this. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email, amckay@alanmckay.com. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you got a lot from it. Like I said, if you can, go to the show notes, alanmckay.com/119. Leave a review. There should be a link to go to iTunes to leave a review there. That would mean the world to me. And just a reminder, if I'm talking really fast, is because I'm trying to keep these episodes as short as I can, so it's not a major headache for my team to go through. So I'm trying to condense these down and try and keep them around 20 minutes. So that's why these episodes end up lately being me talking a million miles an hour. But hopefully I still make sense. And next episode is the last of these for the year, and I'm hoping that you've gotten a lot from this. Like I said, check out the show notes. More importantly, grab the guide for making this the best year yet. It's a free ebook that you'll be able to get there. We put a lot of work into trying to capture all the insights from these episodes, so that way you can take that and read it on your iPad or your iPhone or your whatever. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. I'll be back with the final episode 120, and that'll be it for the year. And hopefully I'll be back with more episodes come January. Rock on.